All right, welcome everybody to this masterclass on tempo. I'm just gonna go over fundamentals, most of it, because there are a lot of advanced things we can be looking into when discussing tempo, and I think it's good if we start with fundamentals simply at first, and maybe if there are gonna be any questions related to this topic, you can ask those in the chat. As usual, just open the chat here in the voice channel. For anyone who is new, just click this here, open chat, ask your questions there. Or there was okay, there was a notification, I guess. Or you can also unmute and ask any questions later on. That's all good. There's gonna be not too much theory. I think most of understanding the tempo, it just comes with the practice, just looking through multiple examples. And this topic can be applicable in any game, I think. Maybe there are gonna be some games where it's not. Maybe it's not multiplayer, yeah, not team-based especially. But I think most of the games which are team-based, it's really important idea. You guys maybe been playing like League of Legends, so maybe Overwatch, yeah, it's more related to the Marvel Rivals as well. Maybe there games like Dota, it's also all of that stuff is applicable. That's why if you can use that in your future games, this principle, I think it's always beneficial. And I think let's just start with the basics. What tempo is? What is tempo? It's the amount of advantage or power you have. That's how I would describe it. I know that different definitions of the tempo, and it depends on maybe just on the game you play, or maybe just depending on the where you're planning to, yeah, because there's idea of the tempo in music. Yeah, you can play fast, slow tempo. You can also have tempo in the games like chess or maybe certain sports. It's definitely might be different meanings, but usually it comes down to this. I think it's gonna be really, really important. And when we try to calculate the tempo, especially in this game, I think there are a lot of things we can be looking for, and I just want to simplify it to the normal, just maybe some basic things you can be looking for. It doesn't matter what rank you are, you can always apply that. I usually suggest to calculate the power properly, start looking at numbers of the teammates you have and on your team and the enemy team, and ults being used. And this is what I call score of the fight, and I just want to elaborate on that. I think it's gonna be good if we just gonna go over some of the examples here. Okay, let's just use one of the games. I prepared some of the games from this player's name is Tanuki, and I think there was gonna be just some games from Marvel Rivals Cup. Yeah, let's just start with, doesn't matter what game we're gonna be looking at. Okay, let's look at this one. For example, it's gonna be on that Star-Lord, I believe. Yeah, Tanuki currently is top 10, and they always been around top 100. They're pretty good, they're playing in the team as well, and they do have a lot of duelists in their pool. I think it's more flanky oriented, and I think the idea of the tempo can be especially emphasized when you look at the flankers, when you look at just those characters which can go in and out in general. But there is even a bigger macro idea, yeah, bigger concept if you look at the tempo when just going over, it doesn't matter, just team setting or maybe any other character, it's still going to be applicable. Okay, let's take a look. What I'm talking about, the score of the fight, I think just once we gonna have our first ultimates, I think that's the section we need most likely. Okay, so this is when I think after a few fights they're gonna have some of the ultimates coming up, and the enemy team, they also do have coming certain ultimates. So we see the Loki, we see that there's Luna Snow is probably gonna have their ultimate, and on the Tanuki's team they have something like Henry's ultimate, and there's Emma Frost. Okay, now how are you using this information? Well, first off, tempo, and it's good thinking to do before the fight, but you can always be thinking about what are the passive resources you have, because the amount of ultimates you have in general, it gives you that passive power which you able to use later on. But to me, the biggest thing about the tempo is not the moment that you have the resources, maybe you have those ultimates or abilities whatsoever, but when you actually use them, once you use them, your graph becomes more spiky. Yeah, there's a bigger power spike typically. And in the games like Overwatch and any other games, you will see that maybe you get a certain item. Yeah, maybe you get a certain ultimate. This gives you power. But just having this ultimate or like item itself, yeah, I don't know, just anything that gives you power, it's good enough. Yeah, it's generating some value. But when you actually use that, there's going to be always a bigger spike. Yeah, we kind of look at this. Yeah, there's more kind of flat graph, and then afterwards there's going to be a spike once you do something. Okay, and that's how you look at those ultimates, to be honest. Once those are used, you can always think about them and think about what it gives you in the fight. Yeah, what kind of advantage it presents you. Okay, so just watch a little bit. I think once both teams start using something, we'll talk about the score of the fight a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot more theory to go over too, but let's just start with the basics for now. Okay, no one's using ultimates currently. The enemy team, they need to kite. Yeah, if we're just talking about the score of the fight currently, even when nothing is used, I always look at it this way. You have 6 of your teammates, yeah, and they have currently, because one guy is dead, the enemy Phoenix is dead, they only have 5 people. Okay, so this already gives you the score of 6 versus 5. So the enemy team in general, they have less of advantage. So in other words, they have less of a tempo, and we do have tempos. So that is power which we able to generate with our numbers. Okay, now let's just keep watching. Just keep watching when we're gonna use some of the ultimates. Okay, so they start pressure, and I think probably expecting something really soon, because the enemy is gonna contest this. Yeah, they have to do something. Obviously, there's still some sort of room for them to maybe give up the space, but mostly they just want to wait for this person to come back and then collapse. Yeah, then once the numbers will be 6 with 6, then we're gonna have this more of an equal situation, equal tempo, equal power. We can try to do something. Okay, and you see that the enemy is actually starting with their Loki ultimate, and they copying Luna Snow currently, and Inwiz is also answering their ultimate. Let's just watch that a little bit. I think it's starting almost simultaneously. Okay, what happened there? The Loki started create the score of the fight, such as let's just put it this way: it's gonna be +1 ultimates being used, and then on this red team, there's gonna be another ultimate which is used as well. Now, I know that there are a lot of ultimates in the game, and some ultimates which are more powerful or less powerful, but to be honest, for the average player, I usually recommend to just make a decision to understand how do you need to play. Look at this way, so you look at the numbers and then look at the amount of ultimates being used, and then this creates the score of the fight. So now the score of the fight is 7 v 7. And what it tells us that both teams, in theory, they have equal tempo. Of course, we can argue, and there are all other things we will go over, such as how resources being used, and maybe positional advantage. But this information is already big enough, good enough for you to make a decision what you need to do, yeah, and who has an advantage, whatnot. And currently, both teams, based on this number score, they have equal advantage in a way. That's how I would put it to just start with. And later on, you probably will see that the enemy team, there's red, maybe they will start to use one more ultimate, who knows. But currently it's 1-1, okay, and then it seems like the red team is starting to use one more, so they are currently 2 ultimate, which gives us the score of 8 on the red team, and this blue team, they currently still have score of 7, so probably we expect them to use one more ultimate. And you see this happens right there, the Emma Frost using their ultimate, so now it's 8 versus 8. Yeah, see how the flow of the fight usually goes. Usually both teams, they're trying to maintain slightly higher advantage, because if you don't, then you're gonna get rolled. Yeah, you're just gonna get your resources forced. You don't want to get caught by this power spike of the enemy team. Yeah, because, well, obviously holding resources is good, but the most powerful is the time when we actually do something. Okay, I'm not even gonna talk about the macros, how, what they use at what time. All of that is irrelevant. We're just gonna be looking at the bigger picture. Yeah, just always what is the tempo of the fight based on the score. Okay, so that is something to start with. Okay, doesn't make sense, the score of the fight. Ultimates being used, again, this is really important, not ultimates, but ultimates being used, because this creates a bigger, higher spike. Okay, there's always gonna be higher spike of power, and then numbers as well. Doesn't make sense. You guys can unmute, tell me, it doesn't make sense. Smite 2, by the way. Yeah, the Solar, you're right. This game is also applicable. Are there any questions?
No.
No questions. Okay, I just want to make sure this makes total sense. If you want me to elaborate on this, then it's totally fine. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. I actually want to ask you guys questions. I don't know if you looked at the first page for the one I shared, but what do you think tempo can be based on as well? What are the other variables we can look at besides numbers on your team, the enemy team, and ultimates being used? What else? What else can influence the tempo? What do you think?
What cooldowns we have?
Soulbound.
Cooldowns.
Okay, cooldowns and
Like
solar. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, one moment. Okay, that's that was notification on the phone. Cooldowns. That was one, and what is another one?
Like soulbound and runes.
Runes.
Character deaths.
Okay. Oh, character. Okay, character deaths. What do you mean by that?
Like a character getting in the sense of getting knocked out.
Yeah. Well, this
like
can
like a final hit.
Yeah, this is exactly the stuff related to just numbers in general. Yeah, how many people we have available on our team and how many people they have as well. So to be honest, that is oh yeah.
Yeah, how much like a damage potential we also have currently in our team.
Yeah, damage is interesting one for sure. I think this one is more of a stat which usually needs more interpretation. That's how I would call it, because a lot of times when you look at the damage, unless we know the comp we play, the comp they play, and how we play it, yeah, where the damage is being put, then it's hard to interpret. But yes, this can also be the good stat to look at. Actually, in the team environment, when we're talking about professional teams, a lot of times they have multiple coaches. They might have like a captain coach in a way, just responsible for leadership, head coach. In other words, there can be a coach which is assistant coach. They can be doing more one-on-ones with players and so on. And there might be even analysis. They can't just interpret certain stats, but they have to look at the big picture. And this way, you know, okay, this damage, is it relevant? Yeah, is it doing something to our tempo? But you're right, I think it's really good. If we're gonna dive in more in depth, I'm not gonna talk about the damage today. I think so the ones mentioned, the cooldown especially, is gonna be really important. So if you're looking here, that's how I would view that, to be honest. Just abilities that is something what can influence the tempo too, just whenever we're playing, whenever we're in the game. And I'm also gonna call it abilities being used, because this creates a higher spike pressure, okay? In general, because you have an ability, you might have this passive power, yeah? A lot of times people will tell you, don't use your ability because you need that for something, but this just giving you this passive power, but then afterwards you gotta use that at the best time possible, so you can shut down the enemy. You can maybe just do something with your ability once the enemy maybe they make a commitment, for example, or maybe you just find that using your ability can allow you to look for better trade. Yeah, maybe you use one cheap ability, but they use two. That is big trade. There's already a good trade, to be honest, and this can allow you to set up the tempo in a way you will have a bigger advantage. So this is really important. And Other thing, I included that. I really like that idea. Is positions can also give you the tempo. Generally speaking, whenever we at somewhat of a power spot. I think there was a masterclass I did before. It was months ago, if I'm not mistaken, and I did talk about power positions. And in general, that is something what allows you to generate that power, and you can have tempo as a team or maybe as a certain character too. And let's just maybe look at this a little bit more. So positions and abilities, I think, again, doesn't matter what section we use too much. Maybe let's just keep looking at this game here. I'm gonna give you some of the examples. And yeah, afterwards, I also prepared, there's a Black Panther game, which is pretty good, I think. We can look at that as well through the lens of the tempo. But yeah, I just start with, actually, never mind. I think this might be more interesting to look at. There's one match. It's from Marvel. Yeah, it's Marvel
Gotta get that-
Rivals
oh my God, look.
Championship, and it's region finals for America. Yeah, so it's grand finals for America. Okay, we can watch that one probably. Just give me a
Gefest, I
moment.
had a question real quick.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
I just had a question real quick. Could it, for the tempo, could it also really determine on the actual player with how aggressive they want to be? If that makes sense.
Determine on the actual player how aggressive they gonna be. Can you elaborate on that? Give me an example.
So, I mean, I know it would have to also do with like cooldowns, but like, for instance, like a tank taking space, and if the enemy team's tank, like if they're getting pushed back and you're pushing them, and you're being more aggressive,
Mhm.
could that also determine the tempo as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So what you're describing there, we build in the tempo, and that's something what I'm going to talk about later as well. This is kind of creating momentum or snowball effect a lot of times because you did set up an advantage. What it allows you to do is, well, first off, it affects the enemy, so they're pushing back, but you got to use that advantage in a way and try to benefit out of it. And a lot of times, especially in the average ranks, at the lowest rank possible, people actually don't benefit out of the advantages they get, or maybe they're not exactly dodging the enemy advantage, yeah, not kiting the enemy advantage if they have that, yeah. So this is really important part. If you benefiting, like good describing there, backline, I mean tanks, they're pushing back and you want to be more aggressive, yeah, 100%. That's on paper it's fine. Yeah, always want to look at the big picture too, just look at the numbers we have, ultimates being used and such. But yeah, you definitely got to use that advantage, and it affects the tempo. You will, in generally speaking, you will have bigger tempo in this case, yeah, because you're trying to take the space. But the problem with that is you don't want to be too over aggressive too. You just want to make sure you keep using the advantage, but keep it balanced so you'll not get punished too, because the enemy will also try to catch you. That might be tricky part. Yeah, a lot of times you see that people, when you try to take space, when there's a, I don't know, maybe Black Panther, you got a lot of kills and you're trying to push a little bit more and take space, but then you're getting caught by somebody. Yeah, maybe there's 2v1 or 3v1 versus you, and then they kill you. That's not the most ideal, but if you actually leverage an advantage in a way so you're not getting killed, but at the same time keep pushing, you can keep benefiting out of the advantage, I think that's fine. I hope that makes sense. I will explain this later on as well a little bit, so it makes more sense too. But yeah, that's the answer to the question in a way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was a dumb question. I was just thinking about
No,
that.
this is good. No, this is good stuff, and I will elaborate on that too. There's gonna be next slide. We're gonna talk about that too. And there's one more question. Card position, yes, it affects the positional advantage point itself. It can influence the tempo of the fight. Yeah, and I think, yeah, well, so it does. Yeah, short story. It does. It just depends on the situation too. Point count for Doom maps. Yeah, sure. That also could dive affect tempo. Yes, dive effect. If you talking about just how comp is playing, there's something what's called pace of compositions, and it's more on the passive tempo part. Yeah, we're not talking about this passive tempo today, but this is something what allows you to just if you understand that, dive has the biggest tempo, the highest tempo at the start, usually because of how aggressive you can be, how many cooldowns you can use. Okay, if you ask that question, I'm just gonna show you this slide here. I think it's gonna be pretty relevant to our topic. Power level of each comp can be different. And okay, this is how it works. In a way, when we're starting with dive, our spike is going, so this here is describing when we actually using abilities, when we actually using some of our mobility cooldowns, yeah, and after that we look into just do pressure. This is our power spike, and the dive is usually has the biggest tempo, the space level in a way, because of just how much mobility you have. Okay, you kind of going in, starting not with the highest tempo, yeah, because we need to do usually setup on the map. But then afterwards, when we done setup, probably around here, and then afterwards we're looking for the dive. That's the highest spike. And the comps like Brawl and comps like Spam. Spam is more flat curve, in my opinion. It just does kind of straight line. It just shoot. You constantly doing the pressure. Obviously, the spikes of the pressure also exist, depending on if you're using certain ability or not. Yeah, if you hold the ability, it kind of keeps flat. If you use that, the power spike happens, but now it's just kind of a general pace of the comp. Yeah, there's more from macro level, so you can ignore the cooldown spikes even. And the Brawl usually does this, where the spike, eventually the pace goes down and down and down, because your ability is getting forced out more and more, so you have to stabilize, but at the same time we don't have as much mobility, so eventually we lose in power. That's how it looks like typically in terms of this. I probably will elaborate on that in the future, by the way. I just wanted to share that because I knew that there would be probably some questions about that. So yeah, it's a good start though. That doesn't make sense. Could dive affect tempo? Yeah. Let me see. Even without kills, but the dive character applying a lot of pressure on backline makes frontline more vulnerable. Yeah, well, this depends on dive execution too. Yeah, this really depends. Spam is the poke. Yes, it's just graph from Overwatch. Okay, that's I usually been using that with the students. So yeah, it's the same. Spam or poke, it doesn't matter. Yeah, just sweet fundamental playstyles. They're always there in those kind of games and the hero shooters. So it's good. Consistent damage output, punishes Squirrel Girl, Moonlight probably, yeah. Well, yeah, it's fine. Any long range character, it's usually gonna be more spammy. It's gonna be fitting in this category. Let's put it this way. Okay, now going back to our topic. Numbers plus ultimates being used, they give you the score of the fight, they give you an understanding of how much power you have, you can calculate the power, and abilities being used too, and positions as well. So I'll just use one of these examples here. I actually need the video. Okay, give me a second. Is it here? Yeah, it's this one. That's what we need. That's from Marvel Rivals games, was Grand Finals. I think why not to use that? I don't have the exact code like I did before, but now we can just watch that a little bit. See how both teams building an advantage. Look at all those layers, resources, positions, and such. Okay, so both positions start, and this is what we call neutral in those games. Yeah, we call it neutral. None of the teams have an advantage. So in theory, your graphs are only about what kind of compositions you're playing. You kind of have this passive tempo. Yeah, passive tempo just depending on what comp we're on. Here, I think on Arrival 7, they got some sort of more poke brawl kind of mixed hybrid playstyle, and in here on this blue team, they got some sort of, yeah, there's kind of the same story, I think. The brawl and poke hybrid, but with slightly more mobility, because you also do have the Ultron. I don't, well, to be honest, on the red team, they're also one flyer too. I think it's kind of equal. I think to me it feels a little bit equal in terms of how both comps are playing. So it might be perfect examples. Okay, so pace of the comps is gonna be similar. Yeah, there's more passive pressure, it's gonna be sort of similar, but the other stuff is gonna matter a lot. Okay, so for example here, you see that Ultron is taking an angle. This already is gonna create the tempo, and because we do take this angle, it gives us benefits with building with by building the small advantage, you can potentially force out more resources, and because you do, then you can build on that, and later on we can gain the momentum. Yeah, we can get the rest of the enemy team. So this is a good start. Generally speaking, now blue, they have slightly higher tempo based on the position, but you will see later probably one of the guys on the red team, they will try to take the spot somewhere too on the map. Yeah, with angles. Okay. They're kind of just a little bit stuck on this choke here. They need to break through, but then eventually we see that Squirrel Girl is jumping up. Sorry, I think it is. And it's Storm. Okay, sorry, it's Storm. It's Storm jumping up here. So it's also giving the rat a little bit of advantage, and so it becomes a little bit equal. But because the Soltron got forced out, the rat in theory they have slightly bigger advantage now. Yeah, obviously gotta look at the other abilities too, like the shields. Yeah, just actually this can be pretty chaotic. Yeah, you just all of this time. Yeah, if you even watch this bubble being used here, this also gives you power spike. Yeah, and this gives you an advantage, and you need to utilize that. Yeah, for example, there's a healing bubble. Okay, we can start playing more aggressive or fast in a way. Okay, if I just go back, I think it's important to mention when we looking at all of this, calculating the power, we just need to understand: are we playing fast or slow? Okay, and what that means is I will elaborate on that later as well. But basically, fast is you using an advantage, and playing slow, you're trying to get an advantage. You're trying to build an advantage, and in here. I'll just go back to this. In here, when we have healing bubble, well, we gotta use that. We gotta push. So we'll see that this thing that will try to push more aggressively. Maybe there's gonna be someone else like Emma Frost that will try to push more aggressively. Now, once this is gonna be gone, the enemy, because our spike gets slower, the enemy will try to capitalize with it. Yeah, they will try to push forward. At the same time, they're using this Groot Wall here. Yeah, it's interesting to do calculations. Yeah, ability cost, what it does, what it forces. I don't think we'll dive into numbers too much. Yeah, we could be doing that. Look at the HP, but all of the action, all of the cooldowns, it does affect the tempo in general. So far, what have we seen is Ultron used some of their stuff. There's been Bubble, there's been Groot Wall, there's been a Shield of Emma Frost, right? All of this affects the tempo. Yeah, Groot Walls and such. But see, if we pay attention to position advantage, what team generating more advantage right now? I think it's been all the time. It feels that blue has slightly stronger advantage over time because the Ultron been able to maintain the soft angle for longer. And you'll see them actually the facts they will charge to you. I think they built their ultimate pretty fast because of it too. And this allows you to, once you have this ultimate, to just capitalize with, yeah? Because the fight feels equal. If you look at the score of the fight, I think this is the biggest thing to just decide, should you use your ultimate or not? We have score 6. They have 6 people. We have 6 people as well here on the blue, but one ultimate's being used. Yeah, why we need that? Because we always need to maintain slightly higher advantage. I think it's also always easier to do with ultimates. It wasn't one of the best tools, but in theory you could also be doing that with abilities, but it's more difficult. Yeah, like we saw there, it might be pretty chaotic as well, and you can also see that in other games related where the resource is really important. Again, League of Legends or maybe Overwatch is more related to this as well. So now we have bigger scope of the fight, okay? And the red team, because of it, they have to give up the space, yeah? And this here, because we get benefit, we may be getting one more pick on the enemies, so they have the score fight. We get a benefit out of that and push. We need to just take a little bit more space. We gotta play fast in a way. That's something what I'm gonna talk about later. But see, what I'm trying to emphasize, all the positions, all the resources, all the cooldowns, you can influence the tempo at all times. Just doing this clip. It does make sense so far, this idea of just how to calculate the power, what is based on. I know we can break down more examples too, but okay. What? Okay, sorry, I was distracted with the message there. Okay, Pocket Cat is subbed out this game. What do you mean? I'm not sure. Are you talking about that?
The players,
or?
the players. Yeah, I know the players. That's all.
Also, I have
okay.
a question about tempo in general. So, like, when you're talking about tempo, it's like who has more pressure to the enemy team, right? Like,
yeah, Yeah. It's sort of advantage, yeah. It's sort of who has a bigger advantage.
Who has more advantage? You're right.
Yeah. That's how I would put it, because there are different ways of looking at that, but generally speaking, yes. And once you know all of these variables here, just positional stuff, maybe the cooldowns wise, and maybe ultimates as well, I think this will allow you to understand, do you play fast or do you play slow? As I mentioned. And important note, I also made it kind of more clear as well. When holding an ability or ultimate, it can give you passive tempo as well, like I mentioned, but you get bigger power spike by using something, by using ultimate or ability or even position. Okay, I'm also gonna maybe put it in here, position or other. Okay, just anything what can benefit of the tempo as well. Now, let's look at
critical.
Okay, that's on me. That's my critical power. It's not yours, guys. Now, let's look at the playing fast. Okay, playing fast versus playing slow. There are a lot of small things related to this. How do you decide how to play and just what it does with your gameplay? But I would start with simple understanding of that. Just when you try to play fast, you're trying to use an advantage, and when you're playing slow, you're setting up an advantage. And I'm exactly phrasing it this way because a lot of times people, when teams would say let's play slow, they would try to give up the fight completely. They would not try to fight properly, and sometimes they would just call something like, oh, let's do dry push. Maybe the enemy, they got a lot of ultimates available, so we don't have as much tempo. They probably will roll us. But I think it's not the best to view this this way. We always want to look at the play so we can set up something proactively. So even though we don't have an advantage, like we gotta play slow, we still can set it up somehow. I don't know how. Maybe you gotta regroup, maybe you gotta do something in the map which allows you to take better spot. Maybe it can also be that you can punish an enemy pushing over aggressive, punishing them for mistakes. Playing slow doesn't mean that we gotta fully regroup and sit and spawn. Like a lot of people would do that. This game here, I don't know, somebody dies and then people say, well, we gotta regroup, let's play slow. But it's not the case. You can always try to catch the enemy mistakes. I think you can always try to set up your advantage. Okay, let's just maybe look at the difference between playing faster and playing slow. There are a lot of things written in here to just make this simple. I think that multiple lenses we can look at when we're playing fast. I just included decisions and positioning for the most part. When we're playing fast, it's typically about taking space on the map, trying to push forward, like we saw on this team here. Okay, we saw that the red is gonna give up the space and blue is pushing. Why? Because blue is playing fast. They're using an advantage they have currently and pushing forward. A lot of people, though, they make this mistake at the doesn't matter what rank is, but especially the low rank, they're not using an advantage. Like a lot of people, maybe they would not even recognize that, well, my Ultron is using ultimate, or maybe enemy team, they actually lost a player, so they gotta push. And because they don't push, they're allowing the enemy team to fully regroup, and it makes it easier for them to retake the space. You're not able to snowball in a way. That's what I'm talking about here. You can snowball, and snowballing is all about get small advantage and then use that advantage to gain even more benefits. It can be getting more space. It can be also getting important position on the map too, like see here, which is benefiting this way, so we can push forward and get more kills and get more ult charge. That's it. That's our benefit. That's how we build on that advantage. Okay, and afterwards, we're just gonna reset up, take different space, and it's gonna be fine. Okay, let's look at this guy here, maybe the Tanuki one. I think probably can be good to look at. I think the first fight's been pretty tough, but once they just look through, just they went through the first point, I think that's when they started building an advantage pretty quickly. Yeah, we'll see it here, actually. It's just right after the almost this first choke point, once they win it, they first off, they generate an advantage by being in this position. Isn't Tanuki Black Panther? Yes, they also play Black Panther. I have the replay too. We can look at that as well, if you want. We definitely, if we have time, we will. But yeah, they're also pretty good stalwart as well. They're pretty good flanker in general, I think. And the Jeff player, yeah, that's what I mean. They're really good flanker. That's why you'll see them a lot just on some sort of angle really far away, and Stalord is exactly really good at that stuff too. They start generating an advantage. Yeah, what they did, yeah, maybe you can also do it in your solo queue matches. Your position is allowing you to generate the advantage, and after that you pressure, you just shoot, and building on that advantage. There are multiple abilities being used. Yeah, I'm not gonna dive into that, who has an advantage, whatnot, but it seems currently I would bet on the red team. They probably would have slightly bigger advantage based on the position, because it feels like that both teams have two ultimates. I'm not going into which ultimate is more powerful, less powerful, doesn't matter right now as well. It's just the score of the fight will be kind of similar. If both ultimates is going to be used 6 plus 2, so it creates the score of 8, and this here also 6 plus 2 creates the score of 8. This is makes so much easier when you play and you decide, do you gotta push, do you gotta do something? Okay, so now we're starting to pressure. The blue team is actually using the ultimate first, but there's also Loki's ultimate too, so it's 1-for-1, and the blue team is starting to get a little bit more stuff done. It feels, yeah, they got a kill. Okay, actually the red team seems they've been not able to take advantage of that much, but you also see that as, well, from Tanuki's perspective, okay, if you look at that, the fight is, so it starts here, okay, when the fight starts is, it's 6 plus 1 ultimates being used, okay, so score of 7. Now we have score of 6, but then once Loki is using their ultimate, it creates the score of 7, but then they notice that ML7 is dead. Okay, so it's -1. Yeah, it's -1, so that means we have score of 6 because we're missing one player, and because of it, we probably, and the fact given that we have really low HP for whatever reason, yeah, maybe we just overpush, maybe it was not the best time, but doesn't matter, we have that low HP, that probably will lead to our death, so it's not good for us to do anything. The enemy team, they just have the bigger advantage, you can always hold on that. In other words, we're trying to play slow, yeah, we're trying to get an advantage back later on, and once we have that, once we have our advantage, our benefits, we can use that and take the space, maybe try to do something with our ultimates later. You see, this way it's good to just hold on the ultimate, I think. And that's why I'm not sure that... Okay, that was Loki ultimate. Okay, so that's fine. Exactly, yeah, it's pretty good right now. But then, after that, you see that we start taking space, okay? The enemy here, it's Iron Fist. They've been using their ultimate, but then they died. It's 6 versus 5. I'm not sure if it's that the best to use the ultimate right now for the Stalord. Maybe they can hold on that a little bit more, but to be honest, it's usually kind of decent decision. If you know, the numbers are kind of +1 or plus, it's just around 1 or 2. Difference, yeah, 1-2 numbers difference usually can be okay, yeah, but you can always use it this way, such as, to simplify, if I have the score of 6 and the enemy have the score of 6 as well, we just need to keep the score even. It's either we keep the score even with the enemy or +1. Yeah, so in this case, if they would have 6 players, it's definitely beneficial to use the ultimate. Now, I'm not sure, maybe they can hold on that a little bit more, but still, it's alright, sort of. Because they also need to force out the Magneto's ultimate, so it's not bad right now. Yeah, like we said, trying to just create the slightly bigger score, or even score, so we get a chance to win. Like I saw in the team environment there, both teams been playing versus one another, how they've been trading the ultimates there, the space there a little bit, so this is how it works. Okay, now about the snowball effect, once we got this advantage here, we gotta use that somehow. We have the momentum, we can just build on that, and we gotta, usually, especially, it's gonna be important to take more space on the map, if possible, if character allows you to. And at this moment, when the enemy is trying to play slow, you will see that, yes, you have the momentum, but you want to be careful, you don't want to get caught and be over-aggressive, yeah, because if you do, then the enemy will rebuild the advantage, okay? So they're still being cautious, yeah, pushing with advantage, but be cautious, yeah? And afterwards, you maybe can try to set up on the better spots. Like here, there's a good power spot in the middle. You can do whatever you want. You can also have this high gun here. But all of that allows you to create even bigger snowball effect. Keep pushing, keep getting the staggers. We're using an advantage, whatever costs. Yeah, maybe building more ult charge, maybe trying to get better spots on the map. Yeah, but now once we're not able to, because let's say here, what advantage we got? Well, it's none. Yeah, now there's, if you look at the score of the fight, all of these guys are respawning. So if we're gonna push, maybe in a way play fast, which is gonna be wrong, then we might get punished. I think it's gonna be pretty easy for this blue team to do so. Yeah, that's why you gotta just start generating an advantage. Start doing something first, create smaller advantage, and then after that you can push based on that. So see, they're not playing too fast. Yeah, they're playing slow generating. Okay, we actually pushed this guy out, and I think we got a kill. So this already gives you an advantage, and you can try to take a little bit more space on the map. And you see that the enemy here, they pushing more defensively. Yeah, like I said, they have to play slow. Okay, I just want to make sure, does this example make sense, or any questions? Do you guys have any? You can maybe ask. You wanna mute? It's fine. I just will be moving forward later with the other things. So everything's clear. Okay, if everything's clear, then we move forward. And I mentioned the snowball. Okay, I mentioned that when you have an advantage, you gotta do something, you gotta use that. And at the same time, on the opposite side, when we trying to play slow, it's all about that you missing the end advantage, trying to get it. Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting part, especially if you look at this guys here. Doesn't matter which example, but how can you get an advantage is not only through regrouping. Like if you look at the decision stance of this enemy team here, the blue team, usually you're trying to just give up a little bit more space. You're trying to get your score of the fight back, get the person back. But a lot of times, you can also think about how to punish enemy pushing over aggressive. Yeah, like we said, maybe there's somebody we can caught. Yeah, and we still can try to bait. So if I'm this tanking away, just go back to this replay. If I'm this tanking away, I don't want to give up too much space. I still want to apply pressure. Yeah, a lot of people, they would just give up the space completely. They would say, well, Phoenix dead, GG, whatever, yeah. And maybe it's not the best to try to take a fight, but you gotta do. Yeah, you gotta do, because you're baiting the enemy to also do something over aggressive. Yeah, you can try to do that. And the same goes for this red team too, actually, because they have an advantage. They can try to be more aggressive, and this afterwards allows them to also bait something from the enemy team. But especially when you're in defense here, yeah, when we have less of advantage, you need to be doing baiting more, I think. Okay, so you see, okay,
So,
like,
so-
oh yeah?
So when it comes to, I guess, characters like in a sense of Punisher, I'm guessing, is he? I'm guessing he's more of like slow or fast.
Well, it's
When it comes
not
to,
the
like-
character itself. Okay, it doesn't matter what character you're playing. It's just playing fast or slow depends on all these factors here. Like we mentioned now, it can be number of ultimates being used, abilities being used, positions, all of that allowing you to understand, do you play fast, do you play slow? In a way, with the Punisher, you have this set tempo, yeah, kind of default tempo. This kind of usually relates to this graph here. It's more of a flat graph, but in case of Punisher, because there's a turret, there's going to be a spike of pressure around the turret as well. Once they do that, there's going to be higher spike of pressure because this ability is being used. So this forces an enemy to play slower because they gotta be playing around the cover, because if they play fast, then they're going to get punished for it, okay? So it's not the character itself, it's just adapting based on the situation, yeah? Even though you would be Punisher here, doesn't matter. If I'm Punisher playing this team, I want to play slow now. Why? Because the enemy got a pick. Yeah, they have to just take a little bit more space, because if I start playing fast, then they will punish me. Yeah, so they got a pick here on the Phoenix. Okay, and you cannot do that. You gotta play really, really slow. But if you would be on the red team Punisher, you gotta play fast. Why? Because you have an advantage. You gotta use that. I'm using that, and the blue team is setting up an advantage somehow. They're thinking what to do. Okay, maybe let's try to bait an enemy team. Okay, or maybe let's try to set up at the better spots, like this Black Pond. The Iron Fist. Iron Fist trying to set up at the sort of off angle too. Maybe that is something what allows you to generate an advantage too. I'm not sure if it's gonna work out for them. Yeah, it didn't, because I think the numbers advantage still pretty strong, but yeah, that's how it looks like. Does it make sense?
So let's say if like the enemy team has like an advantage of in numbers, like say they have 6 and then we have like 4, right?
Yeah.
Then we have to play slow in order to set up for like a bait, and then and also like focus on having the 2 players that are down to regroup with us. That way we can like set up an even tempo, and then maybe like uh play more fast in the long run.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So this is how you can think about that, but also don't forget about ultimates being available. So even though we would have 6 people, let's say the blue, they I don't know, let's just say, yeah, the red have 6, and now on the blue team you're losing even more members. So we lost this guy. Okay, fine. Maybe we lost Iron Fist. Okay, fine. But because we have C ultimates, in theory, you can try to restabilize, but you gotta be careful. Usually it's not the best decision. It might be too big of an investment when it's 4v6 fight, because you gotta use 2 ultimates to compensate for that, and the enemy, they also, in this case, actually, they have 3 already, so we'll probably not win. But that's why I usually recommend when there's 1 score difference here, like this 1 point difference, okay, that's how I call it, then you can actually consider trying to regain the tempo back with ultimates. I think that's gonna be alright. Unless you have too strong advantage here, the enemy don't have any ultimates at all, then maybe you can try to just start using multiple. But this can be a good rule of thumb. We have 5, okay, we can, generally speaking, try to also create the even score by using 1 more. Yeah, we giving you gotta understand that the fight where we take it place, where the fight takes place, I think Solar just mentioned that the card position can affect the tempo. Yeah, it's also really important. So in our case, using ultimate later, I think it's fine, because we're trying to win this section anyway. We're winning this last section, okay? So we can just let these guys to push more and more until we get the person back, so it's gonna be 6 again, and then we start using ultimates. I think that's even better, yes. So it's more safe approach in a way. Yeah, just numbers plus ultimates being used. That's how you can look at that. But even though you're missing, yeah, let's say it's crucial. Okay, like now the point would be here. It's just a matter of, if we take a fight, we have to take it. If we don't, then we lose the point. Okay, so in this case, using ultimate can be completely fine. Yeah, it's not gonna be like suddenly not gonna give you too much value. Yeah, but let's say we would have, I don't know, like 3 people, and they have 6 here, so we're missing, I don't know, maybe this guy Loki as well. I don't think it's going to be beneficial to try to fight for the point as much, usually, because it's going to be too big of an investment. Later on, you probably will not have the best ult economy, and then we just have to... Yeah, we will not be having the highest advantage later in the fight as well, yeah, when fighting for the next point. So that's how I view that. Yeah, just to try to look at this way. Yeah, 1 point difference, okay, I can think about something, probably. There are also other factors too, like positions, but this is a simple way of looking at it. I know might be sometimes confusing, but this way it makes it more simple. Like, okay, what we're using now, what they're using, okay, the score feels equal, okay, then I can maybe pressing a little bit more, or maybe we already have an advantage, let's just keep using that, yeah, keep pushing, I don't need to use anything like this red team does, yeah, they're being patient, yeah, why not be using anything, why they Emma Frost holding the ultimate, yeah, they could be using it right away, but they don't need to build an advantage now, they need that slightly later, yeah, like here, that's when we actually have the Phoenix back. They know that, yeah, maybe intuitively even, they just know they have this mind map where the character is, and then they need an advantage, so it matters more to press now. Yeah, because if we do it before, then it's gonna be less beneficial. It's like to exaggerate on this, you know that a lot of people would say it's bad to overult. Yeah, let's say use for ultimates to just win a certain fight. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be too good of an investment. But what if you just use one ultimate one fight, and then one ultimate next, and then one ultimate another? Yeah, I know it's serious, but this is always gonna be better. Yeah, because in the long term, you always gonna. It's better to have higher. If I look at the graph this way, okay, let's say this is value and this is time. It's always gonna be better to have consistent graph like this, yeah, with the power spike, sometimes when we're using the ultimate, rather than have the graph where, actually, I think it's just more accurate to draw it this way. Yeah, like value, okay, time, yeah, so each time we use an ultimate here, it's more beneficial to have this graph rather than this graph here, where there's like one big power spike and then there's like more flat all the time. Okay, so it's just consistently bigger advantage, consistently all the time. that's how it is. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Would you kindly give an example of using spawn advantage in your favor? Oh yeah, this one here, I also prepared that for you. Of course, yeah, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter what. Actually can be a good example of the first fight. Okay, let's just go back, because this when the blue team... Oh, it was not here. Yeah, I think it was on this here. Okay. So this arrival 7. Okay. Arrival 7, let's just go back, yeah, so you guys can remember what happened there. The blue team, they built an advantage. Okay, they built an advantage through good angle pressure. I think some of the other ability usage is also relevant, but yeah, like now they just benefiting out of it and they're using the advantage. But the enemy team, because they start playing more slow, and this here, yeah, if you have a disadvantage, you can use... Where is that exactly? I think this is... Oh yeah, you can exactly use the spawn advantage in your favor. The red team, they can do that because they get their numbers back in a way. In theory, if you're the red team here, if you take a complete fight... Oh, sorry, that was... Okay, so if you're the red team here, if you take a complete fight, like 6v6 fight, yeah, and you get one-on-one trade, you're actually winning. You're actually winning with tempo. Why? Because you regenerating faster. Your spawn is simply closer. So this way you can consistently just overrun the enemy with numbers, and that's why you gotta keep using that. You take advantage of that. So now we're just pressing these guys, and we know, okay, we're starting to play slow, but we're using the spawn advantage, so this also generates power too. We can be sometimes more aggressive as well, to be honest, and just to look for one-on-one trades is not too bad, because you have that spawn advantage right there, okay? Imagine the blue team does, how far they gotta go. Yeah, they gotta run really, really far. That's why spawn camping is good strategy, because it buys time. Yeah, for example, if this blue team, they want to spawn camp, yeah, it buys them time, it's good. At the same time, they gotta keep in mind that the red team, they have more fights. They can fight faster. Yeah, they're building their numbers faster. So this might be one of the challenges. So depending on how you use your ultimates, yeah, there's gonna be just one of the team either win or lose here, depending on how they manage all of that stuff. Okay, I think it's pretty chaotic here in this replay now. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening. What's relevant is, so first off, we're using the numbers advantage, and eventually, probably, you will be able to run the enemy if you're using the abilities on the paper. If you're using the abilities correctly, if you're using the position correctly, I think it should be fine. That's how I view that, if that makes sense. It doesn't make sense, Enigma, the spawn advantage.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I just look at maybe any other things. So far, we got just playing slow, I think. Yeah, maybe I can elaborate on that a little bit more. When we are trying to potentially play slow, I think it's also important to understand that you can usually try to anchor, run who is making the most space sometimes. This is more relevant to any support or maybe any duelist. If you notice that, okay, my team's just they die over and over again, okay, I need to somehow play slow and build that advantage. I think just watching what your tank does, and maybe anybody else who is able to take more space, yeah, who's making more space, you can try to take advantage of that too. So you build the pressure base of that. And you also notice there's another thing which might be counterintuitive for some of the players, is when you add too big disadvantage, like let's say for whatever reason we are 2v6, yeah, we just only have 2 people. Like in that case, on this guy's team, okay, so this here, once the blue starts losing, yeah, the red team, they have too big of an advantage, the blue team starts losing here, okay, they can look for riskier plays. They can just look to be more aggressive. Why? Because it doesn't matter. They cannot win the fight anyway, because they're already at big disadvantage. Big disadvantage is usually, the difference is 2 and more. Yeah, 2 and more points. Yeah, 2, 3, 4, doesn't matter. It just goes down and down, and the less people you have, the less points you have, the more aggressive you can be, because there's nothing to lose. So you usually use that time to build charge, ult charge, and maybe sometimes you might even be able to get a kill unexpectedly. Yeah, maybe you just get a big advantage, or maybe you get sometimes people get the multiple kills, and then you might turn the fight around too. That's why it's really important. When I'm losing the fight, I'm looking for riskier plays, and that's why you usually look at somebody like, let's say, Black Panther. Yeah, we never watched this replay, I know, but let's look at maybe any of the examples. I think it's always going to be interesting. Once their team is dead, they will typically try to be more aggressive. If they realize they cannot kite, they realize they cannot give up the space. Yeah, so it's always just understanding, okay, I'm playing fast, and then afterwards, yeah, I'm just missing. For whatever reason, I don't have too much of advantage. The enemy has too big of an advantage. I can just be more aggressive. I think the good play, the better pressure starts, yeah, just how they play starts around round 2. I think the first round, their team struggled a little bit. There's pretty good player as well, it seems, on the Black Panther, on the enemy team as well. So now we're just in this phase of building an advantage. If we just, again, go over all the things we went over. We're building an advantage, we're trying to set up a position. The enemy team, in theory, they have more passive power because they got Salak ultimate from the first round, but now we're just trying to set up on the backline, do something. But this guy noticed that, okay, Salak ultimate and 2 people are dead. What I'm gonna do? Am I able to kite to play slow, or do we have that big disadvantage? So it doesn't matter. Probably if you will kite, you're still gonna die, right? So why are you kiting in the first place? Yeah, what if I'm looking for more riskier plays and trying to just get 2 people as well, maybe 1, but imagine you get 2, then the red team is gonna have an advantage here. Okay, so it's gonna be a good example right now. See, okay, there's even another kill. So they're at the man's disadvantage, and this guy realizes, I cannot kite. Okay, maybe they could try, but I think they're still trying to look for riskier plays. Just invest all the cooldowns, build as much ult charge as possible, at least, maybe get a kill, but it didn't end up happening. How much ult charge they got out of this risk play? Yeah. So I think it was around, at least, around 25, yeah. So it's sounding here. Was pretty decent. Okay, and that's how you can decide as well. But if you would just have only 1 man down, then probably this guy here could be playing slower. Yeah, they could be just giving up a little bit more space, and then afterwards, when their teammate is back, they start playing faster. They start playing a little bit more actively. Okay, especially Black Panther is so important, just with how you can manage the tempo. Okay, because your ability is always you create this power spike of pressure, like I mentioned here in this section here. Your dive characters, they have this big spike of pressure in general when you're using the abilities, and that is something we'll play around. But once you don't have that, you lose that power spike, so you gotta stabilize. Okay, now let's just break down everything they do a little bit more. Okay, we're starting with here. Just building an advantage. We start playing slow because we need to build an advantage. Nobody has an advantage. We're building an advantage. How? It's through better positional play, through better cooldowns management, through better ult management as well. Like I mentioned, we need to calculate the power. Yeah, we calculating the power on this first slide, and then afterwards we deciding, do we play fast, do we play slow? Yeah, we don't have enough power right now, so we play slow. Yeah, there's just normal pressure, normal damage, okay? Maybe get rid of something, try to set up your pressure, yeah? It seems that they get in the angle, but their Blank Panther on the blue team is getting kills. So, this guy in theory, they're gonna be playing slow to that extent. Yeah, they still playing slow, but it doesn't mean they're going back too much. They still can maybe bait the enemy to do something. See, they're not going over aggressive here. They're saying, okay, maybe this guy is gonna get over aggressive, and then I can punish that. Okay, maybe this will create this 5v5 score now. So we're gonna have five. They're gonna have 5 people, and we have 5 people. So now we can actually use that. But now they're just playing slower. They don't need to do much. Yeah, but then afterwards they recognize, okay, maybe this guy for whatever reason becomes more vulnerable target, like we said. Yeah, you just recognize that you still can build an advantage, even when you missing somebody. Yeah, it can be the case here. It seems they recognize there's opportunity. Maybe I can try to build a little bit more damage output and force out important cooldowns and still live. Yeah, that's just important part as well. Yeah, but it just happens when there's only not too big of a disadvantage too. Yeah, you see how they manage all of that? They're going in, and then there's a power spike. I'm doing a lot of pressure. I'm forcing out all of this important cooldowns. It's Loki's lamp. It can also be just all of that healing resources too. And afterwards, they stabilize. Yeah, they just go back. They don't have any dashes whatsoever. They stabilize playing slow. Yeah, this is where I'm building an advantage again. And after when I have the abilities, I can start playing faster. Yeah, they got stunned there, unfortunately. Yeah, but at this point, how should they play? Yeah, what do you see? How should they play? Should they play slow, okay, or should they play fast currently? What do you think?
They should play slow, because actually,
What do you
So,
see?
'cause the enemy has a support ult, right? So
yeah, we have support also. I think we should actually.
What about our team? What are we using now?
Uh,
Let me see.
they could. I mean,
Mhm.
they could use an. They're using their Emma, and then
yeah, I'm
they could see
their
by
Invis.
using their Invis
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so they should play fast actually.
Yeah.
Like,
And then
we
I
kinda
know.
have an
Yeah, and then
advantage.
I know as soon as Panther gets a couple hits, then he can pop his ult, and then at that point, it's basically up to his mechanics to see if that's basically a team wipe.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely feels that we should be playing fast. I'm not sure about should they use the ultimate or not, but it also depends on the enemy team what they will do here. I think we definitely have bigger advantage for whatever reason, but yeah, I mean we got the kill. We also have the 2 ultimates being used now. That is something what allows us to take more space. But you see, the thing is, the Luna Snow is using ultimate, so you gotta recognize who is actually you're gonna be dealing damage towards. Yeah, because you know that, well, I cannot do too much, but still, yeah, they need to do something. Yeah, just ideally, we're trying to catch the targets outside of the ultimate. Maybe try to just also divert the enemy attention so our team can push more. Yeah, we're getting the benefits out of our out of our ultimate usage, out of our numbers advantage, because a lot of people here, they maybe would make a decision to play slow, right? You see the Luna Snow ultimate, but you don't need to. I think you have good enough advantage right now to just keep the pressure up. Obviously, watch the area where you have the tempo. You not always wanna. I think it's good first level to look at the big macro. Yeah, just looking at how many ultimates we have, using, yeah, what are we using, what they're using, and numbers, but also look at the areas of the fight we're taking a fight with. Yeah, so right now because some of the ultimates, like the Invis ultimate is here, it can also affect your decision. Yeah, you want to be careful with what space you're pushing. But now, yeah, I think they're definitely gonna do something. Yeah, create the power spike, use an advantage. So they just going in, doing something with their abilities. After that, stabilize. We don't have abilities, and the enemy team currently, okay, there's still Luna Snow ultimates going on, and the Magneto is using their ultimate, so it gets us to the score of 8, and we also have the, well, it's still, the ultimates are there, yeah, passive power is still there, but I'm talking about the active power. We only have score of 6, but the Luna Snow ultimate is gonna end soon, so they wait, Luna Snow ultimate ends, and now let's start doing something, okay? Some of the people would say yes, it also because you need to wait for this guy to end the ultimate and such. Yeah, it's also important, but also look at numbers at all times. Yeah, understand, are you able to actually get enough advantage based off the score of the fight currently? Yeah, because now the score of the fight is 6. We actually lost a player. Yes, so what should we do? What should we do here? Yeah, but it's still good enough. If you start using your ultimate, it gives you the 6 score versus 6, so it's even, and you can build an advantage, I think, based on that. Yeah, of course they try to stabilize with their ultimate, but it's fine. It's like push and pull. Yeah, some of the players use that. You use that idea as well. When we're doing something, you gotta respawn. The enemy will try to respawn. They will try to use some of their ultimates. Maybe they will try to kite sometimes. Yeah, it's like waves. Yeah, you going forward and then going back, going forward then going back. Yeah, so now they decided to, okay, we gotta stabilize a little bit. Tanuki is also stabilizing afterwards. A little bit annoying for them, actually. 2 Luna Snow ultimates in a row, but eventually they will be able to, yeah, we'll be able to stabilize. Okay, going in. And from here, yeah, we're just probably gonna build enough advantage, I think. Even though there's a solid ultimates being used. Yeah, so I think for the most part, that's all what I wanted to say. There might be also some other ideas we can go over later. It's kind of basic understanding. If we just summarize all of that, what is tempo? Tempo is the amount of advantage or power you have. You can always calculate the power. That's how I've been doing that when I was playing, and I also recommend that do that in this game, like as a coach too. I think it's good if you start with number spots, ultimates being used, scope the fight. And again, I know that some of the ultimates are less or more powerful, but start with that, and then later on you can calculate the power of the ultimate itself as well. That's harder thing to do. Maybe we can talk about that later on, but usually, you know, the basics like support ultimates are more powerful currently. Yeah, it feels a lot of them are pretty powerful. For example, duelist, depending on the duelist as well, it's kind of less. But yeah, the tank ultimates, especially the CC ones, the more crowd control, are more powerful as well. Stuff like that. And abilities being used that affects the tempo too. Positions, like we saw with off-angle example, can also generate power. You have bigger power this way. Your cover, your angle, your range you're using allows you to generate the pressure, and makes it easy. Makes it easy for you to control the space. Once you have all the resources, you calculated the power, you decide, okay, we have this amount of power, they have that amount of power. How do I play? Play fast? Use an advantage or play slow, setting up an advantage. I'm phrasing it exactly this way because you need to stay proactive even though you're playing slow. A lot of people don't do that. They just give up the space. Yeah, for the most part, that's it. What do you, okay, yeah, I read that question, and yeah, maybe any other final questions, guys? Do you wanna ask me anything related to the tempo? And I also showed this graph here. Maybe we can talk about that later too, just how each composition plays and their tempo and such. But yeah.
No, nothing so far.
Okay. Well, as usual, I'm glad to have you here, guys, today, and I'm glad to be helpful. If you have any questions later, you can message me.
I do have a question actually.
Oh yeah.
Let's say like the enemy team is like doing a snowball, like they're snowballing right now. Like let's say like the enemy team is snowballing, so you have to play slow, right, in order to
Mhm.
like kite back with your team that are staggered, correct?
Okay.
Like you have to kite back with your team, right? Like
Oh, yeah. So the first part, yeah, if there's snowballing, you have to kite back. Yes, most of the time. Snowballing it also means usually that because they have too big of advantage, you need to somehow regain your own advantage. Yeah, you just usually do that through. Well, regrouping is important, yes, but at the same time, it might be difficult, and it's usually noticeable at the lowest ranks. Games are more snowbally. That's why you have more one-sided situations too.
yeah.
Or sometimes when there's a bigger side difference, the snowball effects is more important. So I usually recommend for people who struggle with that, you need to either try to get a kill to make sure you punish the enemy. That's what I say here. You trying to get a kill to get an advantage back. Yeah, multiple kills. Yeah, just look at the score of the fight if possible. And ultimates allow you to get an advantage back as well. I think that's one of the biggest things really, because you still will have the situations where you're trying to regroup. You're like, okay, well, it's finally almost 6 people back, and then somebody dies, and you're like, okay, again, like this happens. What I'm gonna do in this case, 5v6, do we regroup again? And I think no, if it's equal score, almost equal, you can create this plus, well, it's either equal score or +1 score, and then you can consider using the ultimate there. I think you can usually build enough advantage based of that. That's what I usually recommend. Usually works the best way, and obviously trying to also, yeah, regarding the snowball, if you in the fight right away, if you notice that you're not able to kite, then I would just go in and try to do as much pressure as possible anyway, like we saw with the Black Panther example. But their teammates, all of their teammates, that they're not able to kite as comfortably, well, let's just try to build ult charge. Let's try to maybe get a kill or two, who knows. Stuff like that. But yeah,
Okay.
when we pretty far,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, this is gonna be, this ball tax is important. Yeah, those two the most important things in my opinion when we playing slow. Any other questions? What are the other presentation slides? 4.6. Oh, it's just for me. So replays, it's all the examples I use at all times. You guys can also watch those. And also the last one is the materials. It's the YouTube, the Discord. If you want to get coaching, you can also do it with that link as well. I definitely open to do the sessions with you guys as well. It's fine. Just message me. Maybe use that link as well. It's okay. Yeah, that's all. Any other questions, or that's it for today?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, then I will see everybody later, and good luck in your games, guys.
Thank you.